Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Andrew Ghai from the Popcorn Talk Network. Usually I cover action movies, but today I'm going to talk to Lawrence Gray here about the brand new horror movie Lights Out. How you doing, man?
Great. Thanks for having me.
Yeah? Yeah, see, I am such a big horror movie fan, and I never get to cover them on my show, so I always saw that you were going to be here, and I'd watched this short 3 years ago, right when it came out. Terrifying. It was one of the ones, like, you have it going, and you don't really want to, you kind of want to skip ahead and see. So what was it about it that caught your attention?
You know, I ended up watching the short film right after I launched my production company, Gray Matter, and so we didn't even have curtains on the office yet. So I'm watching this short film on a bright LA sunny morning, the worst possible situation to watch anything scary, and it just knocked my socks off. It was that universal moment that we've all had where we're turning off the light, going to bed, or putting our keys in the front door late at night, and he did it in such a fresh, inventive way, and I ended up going to sleep having visions of that monster in my head, and then the next day I was like, I have to reach out and see who this guy is.
I need to do something about this, right? Isn't that crazy? Like, when you sit there and you watch something that is that terrifying, that sticks with you that much, I like that you want to go further with it. Like, I've seen so many horror movies that I get so excited about, and then when they come out, I'm kind of let down. And it's not that often that you see a part of a horror movie and you're just dying to get more of it. So I guess my question is what is it that you want to bring to this story? Like, what's new? Because in the short, there's literally no exposition. So what story do you want to tell?
So, you know, Lights Out is the only original, non-branded, non-sequel, prequel, non-movie star-driven movie of the entire Hollywood industry this summer. Wow. So the only reason that this movie like this breaks through, a movie like this gets released in the way it does by a studio like Warner Brothers is if the movie's awesome and original and unique and distinct. So we knew that from the very, from go, that we had to push ourselves to do something really ambitious and innovative, and to subvert the expectations that audiences have when they see these films. So there's no cheap scares. We don't have characters who make foolish decisions that end up getting all their friends killed.
Right, you're not sitting there yelling at the screen the whole time.
Or rooting for them to die,
right.
Which is the experience of a lot of bad genre films. So we set out to make really intelligent characters, characters that really reflect experiences we know. Teresa Palmer, the star of our movie, who's dealing with a mother suffering from mental illness. Teresa's mother herself is a mental illness and struggle that Teresa's had in her own life. And similarly, Maria Bello, who plays Teresa's mother, has had her own experiences with it. So we cast the movie in a way that brings an enormous amount of truth to it. We set a very high bar in terms of the creature design and making that all grounded and in camera without visual effects, and having story that really comes out of the choices of the characters and not convenience that producers take shortcuts to get to. So the movie's been, the response to the film I think has been so overwhelming, because people just love the story. It really aspires to be so strong.
Oh, that's great. And I've heard that test audiences are going wild. Like, you guys were supposed to originally release in the wintertime, right? But since people loved it so much, you pushed it forward. So that must be very exciting.
It's been great. We, the previews were record-breaking previews, and it's been the same with the critics, and now in our word-of-mouth screening. So audiences and critics love this movie, and you don't know. We again, this is a brand new original film, so we're so pleasantly surprised to see people love these characters and love this movie as much as we do.
Yeah, and you keep talking about these things, like you say, like basically that you're not using a lot of special effects, and you want to keep it true, and you're going the extra mile. So I was reading that you guys are using very, very little CGI throughout this whole movie, and I'm a big fan of that. I mean, even if you look at, let's say, Jurassic World that came out, the original Jurassic Park is still scarier because they use animatronics.
Right.
So do you think that the fact that you're not going to use hardly any CGI to create these monsters in these situations, does that make it that much scarier?
It makes it so much scarier. I think all of us, David, myself, James Wan, and everyone surrounding the movie, felt like we'd seen a bunch of recent horror films where they were very CG heavy, and it really doesn't have the same impact. And we wanted to create an iconic horror villain like from the movies of the 70s and 80s that we grew up loving and watching, and those were completely done in a grounded, authentic way, and we felt that was something we set ourselves up to do. Then we all accepted the reality that this is a creature who only exists in the dark and is a silhouette. So imagine the challenges that go from there. Finding this unbelievably brilliant stunt woman who was a professional dancer, a contortionist.
Oh, so the movements.
Yes, so incredibly original, unnatural movement that we then ended up writing into Diana's backstory because of how innovative it was. We ended up, rather than going to, say, the prosthetics people who do Walking Dead, we ended up going to Matthew Mungle, who won an Academy Award for Mrs. Doubtfire. Really grounded, really real. And then, of course, every day challenging ourselves with our cinematographer and the rest of the crew to do something in camera and keep it very, very believable.
Oh, that's amazing. So I have a question. You started off not doing horror films. Your first horror film, I think, was Hidden, right?
Well, I was a studio executive for most of my career at Fox Searchlight and Universal. So I'd done several horror films between 28 Days Later, Hills Have Eyes, Drag Me to Hell. So I'd worked on many, and I've always been a huge horror fan. So Lights Out and Hidden, of course. And so Lights Out isn't my first brush with horror, but I'd never. I just launched my own production company, and this is when you get a chance to do the things that you're most passionate about. And there were missed opportunities along the way. I actually met James Wan originally 15 years ago when he came into my office and showed me the short film for Saw, and I really wanted to make that movie. But my company wasn't making genre films yet. They weren't set up to do that yet. And so I had the pleasure of being able to call James after I saw Lights Out, the short film for Lights Out, and say, James, remember how you and I met? Well, I think I might have the next James Wan. And James was like, well, I hear that a lot. And I was like, well, watch this short. And James sat there, watched the short, and got very serious. And he's like, is this guy as good as this short film?
Right.
And I'm like, believe it or not, he's better. And just like the process of working with David captivated James, and we ended up getting this great team together.
Wow, isn't that crazy how you'll know someone for so long in this business, and you'll always want to work with them, and you'll have nothing. You always have to come back to it down the road. So Saw was iconic. It kind of changed the whole horror movie industry. Do you think that James can do the same thing with this and kind of change it in the sense? It sounds like we've got something really special here.
That's one of the great things about having a guy like James is we tend, I think most people, as you develop movies, to do them in a very chronological way. You break your story, you think of your characters, and then you start getting into the sort of cinema of it. James is thinking about the cinema from the first moment. So we didn't even have barely an outline, and James is already like, we need to get into creature design. We need an iconic horror villain, just like Saw, just like these great classic films. And what happens through that process in the great directorial way is, well, if you're talking about creature designs and informing that, you get into backstory, you get into mythology, you get into the motivation of the character, and all of that ends up creating a much richer, more dimensional world for your movie. And I think James, with James's help, David and Eric and James and I have created a truly iconic horror villain like you haven't seen in a long, long time.
Oh, that's so exciting for me. And the reason for that is I think that in action movies, horror movies, all movies alike, the antagonist, the villain, is so important. You can't have a great hero without a great villain. So you saying that makes me very, very happy. Does it still give you nightmares?
The short film?
Or this film?
It's still the short film. Well, I've seen the smoke and mirrors behind this film, so but it's it's interesting. The short film, still, the images are still indelled in my mind, and I watched the film last night with an audience here at Comic-Con, and I've seen the film hundreds of times, and I still jumped in several places, embarrassed with myself that how do you still not see it coming? But there are some scares in this movie that are just so iconic that time will not heal those wounds.
Right. Okay, man. Well, that's amazing, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time. I have one last question, I should say. What do you nerd out about the most? If I know you're leaving, but if you were going to stay at Comic-Con, what would it be that you have to see?
What do I want to see this year? I'm a huge Game of Thrones person. I saw that there was a little Game of Thrones chamber here at Comic-Con, so that would be something I would love to do, but probably more than anything, I mean, not the most unexpected choice at Comic-Con, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I would probably be buying some collectible Star Wars paraphernalia for my collection.
Are you ready for this year? Are you ready for the new one?
I can't wait. It looks so cool.
Awesome, man. Hey, Lawrence, well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy day to talk to me and all the people at Popcorn Talk. Is there anything you want to tell your fans?
No, pleasure to be here. Go see Lights Out, July 22nd. This movie's amazing. It's like nothing you've ever seen before. I think you'll love it.
You heard it from the man himself. You guys take care.